Good morning. Lieutenant Governor Reynolds and I are pleased to be joined this morning with Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management Director Mark Scouten to talk about storm readiness. Though severe weather in Iowa can strike in any season, the summer months can create a condition for quickly developing inclement weather, and actually we've seen that here quite a bit recently. Severe thunderstorms, flooding, flash flooding, and tornadoes are just some of the weather conditions that occur frequently during Iowa's summer. Trained meteorologists can typically provide advance notice of impending severe weather. By reacting to those warnings, um, it is important that we be prepared and that each family have a plan on what to do if you have severe weather in your neighborhood. Today, Lieutenant Governor Reynolds, Director Scouten, and I are encouraging all Iowans to build an emergency supply kit, to have an emergency plan, and to review it to ensure your family is ready and be aware of the potential for bad weather. As families prepare for travel and outdoor activities over the upcoming holiday weekend, we urge them to also be aware of the weather conditions. If severe weather is forecast, be prepared to seek a safe shelter. Now I'm pleased to turn it over to Lieutenant Governor Reynolds to give you more detailed information.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Governor Branstad. When the tornado hit Lake City in May, the city residents were fortunate to have a warning, and lives were saved, especially at the high school, because a plan was in place and they followed it. When school officials knew that they were in the tornado's path, they quickly evacuated everyone from the auditorium to the school basement. Last week in Albia at the local Hy-Vee store, employees prevented serious injuries by moving their customers into the freezer as soon as they heard that they were also heard the tornado sirens. Last week in central Iowa, Walnut Creek swelled out of its banks, and first responders received evacuated citizens from rising waters. These stories prove that the plans in place at Lake City, at Albia as well, saved lives, and that swift action by central Iowa's first responders prevented citizens from becoming stranded. Now is the right time to prepare a family emergency plan and supply kit. And here are some of the items that should be included in your family's emergency supply kit. Water and non-perishable food items that would sustain family members for at least 3 to 5 days, a first aid kit, money, battery-operated flashlight, extra shoes, clothing, as well as bedding, special necessities like medication, baby formula, diapers, and pet supplies, and copies of important personal identification documents. Your family emergency plan should include an out-of-town relative or a family member to call if your family is separated during an emergency, an understanding of your community's emergency plan and shelter locations, and a reminder that if tornado sirens are heard, the family should immediately move to a basement or an interior room of the house without windows. All of the information is available online at www.bereadyiowa.gov. And now I'd like to invite Homeland Security Director Mark Scouten to the podium.
Thank you, Governor Branstad and Lieutenant Governor Reynolds, for inviting me to join you this morning and talk about severe weather preparedness. As the governor said, severe weather can strike quickly and at any time. In just the past week, we've seen tornadoes and flash floodings, and they've impacted many areas here within the state. Lieutenant Governor Reynolds has outlined two important preparedness steps: making an emergency plan and building an emergency supply kit. I want to talk about a third step, and that is being aware of the potential for severe weather and using the alerting tools that we have available here in the state of Iowa to increase your weather awareness. There are many ways to be weather aware. You can tune into your local TV or radio station. A NOAA weather radio is a tool that can help you keep an eye on the weather, whether you're at home, camping, or boating. Many other organizations and TVs stations offer weather alerts and links to weather radar that are delivered to your computer and to your mobile phone. They all help you become weather aware. Advances in technology have made it possible for the state of Iowa to develop an emergency notification system called Alert Iowa. It too is a significant tool to increase your own weather awareness. Alert Iowa is a statewide system that enables local emergency management and law enforcement to provide timely emergency notification to the public. Through Alert Iowa, potentially life-saving information comes right to you wherever you might be and whatever you might be doing at that time. In counties where Alert Iowa is available, residents can sign up to receive messages in a variety of ways, including phone, text, or email. They may also choose what types of messages they want to receive for situations that could include severe weather, 911 outages, or winter storms. In addition, Alert Iowa utilizes what's called FEMA's Integrated Public Alert and Warning System, or IPAWS. That's a complicated term for a very important process that ensures that the most urgent information is delivered to as many Iowans as possible when an emergency is happening and one that requires them to take immediate action. With IPAWS, which is a national program, messages can go out over radio and television through the emergency alert system, through the NOAA weather radio broadcast system, and most importantly, through wireless emergency alerts. The wireless emergency alerts come through your cell phone, and that allows messages from IPAWS to go directly to you. You may have received a IPAWS message over the last couple of weeks. We've had a few for flash flooding. Those have been issued by the National Weather Service. You may have also received Amber Alerts issued by the Department of Public Safety. Regardless of whether you have signed up for Alert Iowa at your county level and whether or not you've enrolled in that system, you will continue to receive IPAWS messages that come to your smartphone. Currently, 73 counties have signed up, have Alert Iowa up and running, and have the ability to issue messages to more than 1 million system users. Since the system went live last October, more than 3,000 alerts have been sent out to residents in those participating counties. The alerts resulted in more than 1 million individual voice, email, and text notifications being sent by the system for severe weather and other emergency situations. Alert Iowa also has the capability to pinpoint hazard areas and generate alerts for a specific geographical area. It's one of the improvements in that technology that is proven to be very helpful. So if there's a hazardous material spill or a rapidly rising water level from flash flooding, people who are in that specific geographical area can be notified through Alert Iowa and can take steps that they need to take to protect their safety. Recently, we've used Alert Iowa to reach out to citizens within the 10-kilometer surveillance zone in the avian influenza outbreak to help identify those homes that have backyard poultry flocks. The system is used merely to draw the 10-kilometer circle. The system then drops those messages into those people who reside within the system, a very tailored and very effective system. So with the 4th of July holiday coming up and the summer months coming into full swing, I urge everyone to make sure they have taken steps to be prepared in case severe weather sets in. You can find out if your county is part of the Alert Iowa system and learn more about individual and family preparedness at our website, again, www.beready.iowa.gov. Finally, it's human nature to think that nothing bad will ever happen to us. But of course, bad things do happen. And while we can't always prevent them, we can be ready to take care of ourselves and our families. Putting just a little thought into how we will stay safe can make a big difference in an emergency. Thank you.
Mark, thank you very much. Now we open to questions on this subject.
Can you give us an idea of those alerts that went out for avian flu? In that 10-kilometer area you're talking about, what do they say? How do
They say if you have a backyard flock, you should contact the Department of Agriculture because they want to do testing. A part of the concern was there that if you resided within the surveillance zone and had a backyard flock, if that flock was infected, testing needed to be done to ensure that that was not going to be a vector for the disease to spread. The initial plan was to notify those folks by a postcard, putting a postcard in the mail and sending it to them, waiting for their response. I think after that was done for 2 or 3 circles, it was decided we could target that message, send the message much quicker and more effectively if we used the Alert Iowa system. We now have 73 different counties and more than over 1 million system users that have signed up.
you know how many people got the alert then in that 10-kilometer area? Households?
You know, I cannot say with any sense of accuracy. It was used a number of times. How many people received it, I'm unsure.
You know, the majority of homeowners there.
Well, a lot of those went through landlines, and what the Alert Iowa system used, it takes the landline systems from the local phone company databases. So those landline users, whether they had been signed up actively or passively, they would have received the message.
Yeah, you need to be right by the microphone.
Thank you, Governor.
Did you have a question?
I received some alerts and I never signed up for anything, so some carriers are automatically enrolling their customers.
I would think you probably received an iPOS warning. If it happened early in the morning for flash flooding, or it was the most recent DPS warning on the abducted child, you probably received the warning through iPOS. That comes automatically. That's a national program. All people receive those messages. It comes part and parcel with your cell phone.
Other questions on this subject? Okay, we'd open it to questions on other subjects as well this morning.
The legislatures have resolved what happens to teenagers as previously been sentenced.
Larry, did you have?
Governor, you signed into law this year.
Yep.
The three sentences that correct 2 months since you signed that.
So I've already signed legislation addressing that, that was passed by the legislature. Larry Johnson just reported on that. We can get you the information about that legislation. I would just say that, you know, one of our concerns is protecting the public against violent, dangerous people. So we don't want people that are a threat released prematurely. And obviously the parole board, I think, has played a very good role in reviewing, and they have a pretty good system now of determining who's a good prospect and who isn't for parole. Yes.
Probably where there are a number of Republicans who come out and said that they have a lot of concern now about threats to religious liberty. Do you plan to propose anything or take any action to protect religious liberty here in Iowa?
Well, as you know, we've dealt with this issue in Iowa since 2009, and we're going to continue to look at the implications of the Supreme Court decision. But I want everybody to be treated with respect and dignity, and I don't think people's religious liberties should be taken for granted.
Do you believe that, is there any way to just not follow this in some of the presidential candidates or
Well, I'm not aware that there is. I know that there's a lot of people that are concerned about the court decision, and in fact, uh, Justice Scalia in his dissent and was pretty vociferous on that viewpoint, and I respect the division that occurs in this country on this controversial decision, but feel that we have an obligation to follow the law.
Does it make sense to get it out of the party platform?
Well, I think it's, uh, as I said, this is a very controversial issue, and I think it's going to take some time for people to review and determine what is the appropriate way to deal with it. And individual states obviously have their own laws and their own constitutional provisions that they need to be looking at and determining what is the appropriate thing to do. Well, I don't think this is a very controversial issue, and I don't think just because the Supreme Court on a 5-4 decision has said one thing is going to change people's viewpoints. I think there's still going to continue to be people have strong opinions on both sides of this issue, and I think we need to respect that.
Texas Attorney General has told clerks, if they have a religious objection, they don't have to issue a secondary.
Well, that's the state of Texas. It's a whole, don't mess with Texas, I guess they say down there. So they have their own viewpoint of things, and, you know, I'm not going to try to wade into what the Texas Attorney General may or may not have said.
What about Iowa officials?
Well, this has been well established since 2009 in the state of Iowa. So I don't think it has a big impact here. We went through that. We also know that it's a very controversial issue in our state. 3 members of the Supreme Court, when they're up for retention, were rejected by the voters. So it is a controversial issue, and we've gone through it in the state of Iowa, and we've lived with the decision, and people have also lived with the consequences of it.
Representative, I may not ask this the right way, but I'm talking about the Republican Party of Iowa, party platform. I'm gonna take that point out.
Well, first of all, I respect the fact that the party platform is a grassroots document that is developed by the delegates. And my opinion probably doesn't have a lot of, it's the delegates that make that decision. And the last thing the delegates want is for the governor to tell them what that they should include or not include in the platform. I do respect the process and the fact that it is a grassroots document developed by the delegates, not by the elected officials. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Question for Lieutenant Governor. In the standing bill, there's legislation specific to Clark County in
Mhm.
regards to the reservoir.
Mhm.
What's your position? Have you asked, or I guess number one, is it possible, does the governor actually make a decision on that language other than vetoing the entire bill, and what's your position on that reservoir?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, that we're continuing to review all of the bills, and we continue to review all of them. I am a strong proponent of property and rights and individual property rights, and have always been a strong proponent of that. I also am an elected official and citizen of Clark County and Osceola, and I know how important it is in the state of Iowa, not just in Clark County, but in Southwest Iowa, to ensure that we have drinking water and enough water to not only sustain the county, but to sustain growth. And so we will continue to review the bill and balance both in the need for drinking water and able to sustain the community, as well as balancing the rights of property owners. So it's a delicate balance, and we continue to review the bill.
Is it possible to actually veto language? You know this, obviously.
Well, there are many court cases on what is an item. The governor has authority in appropriation bills, limited to appropriation bills, to veto items. So this is part of the review process that we go through. And we are doing that on all of these bills. And there's some pretty complicated bills with a lot of different items in them. And I would just ask you to stay tuned and we will make our decisions and those will be released when the decisions are made and they will all be made on a timely basis prior to the deadline.
So are you expecting, are you gonna be done before the 4th of July?
Well, we will be done before the deadline, whether that's before the 4th of July or not. I would just say stay tuned. I think that's right. The 6th is the actual deadline.
Are you making a decision on the one-time funding for schools?
That is one of the major items that is under consideration. My philosophy has been, and that's one of the reasons why I was recruited to come back as governor, is to stop the bad budgeting practices where the legislature use one-time money for ongoing expenses and set the state up for across-the-board cuts and other disruptions. I want to maintain stability and predictability, and I want to make sure that we have a sustainable budget for the long term.
Do you have holiday plans?
Do I have plans on the 4th of July?
Do you want to
Yes.
work or do you not want to work?
Listen, I have done as many as 7 parades on the 4th of July. Do you want to call that work or fun? I don't know. But I can tell you that I intend to be active on the 4th of July.
Governor, do you know, is there an emergency supply kit at Fairfield?
Yes, and we also have security that's there, 24/7. And indeed, the other night when we had the severe storm, they called me at 1:30 in the morning to tell me about the warning that we'd received about severe thunderstorms and the possibility of hail. So we are fortunate that we have, unlike most people, we have year-round, round-the-clock security there as well. And we certainly do have, supply kits and all of that sort of stuff to deal with emergencies.
Given the philosophy you laid out on the one-time funding, is there any way you could sign that into law and still abide by the philosophy you laid out?
Well, again, we have to make a judgment call on all things, and I've laid out my philosophy and my approach towards things. But then I also have to deal with the reality of the bills that have passed by the legislature. And it's not a perfect world, and they don't pass things necessarily the way I think they should. But then I have to, as the chief executive, decide what I should approve and what I don't approve. And that's a judgment call, and we're going to make that call on each and every item. And we've gone through a very thoughtful, deliberative process, and you will see the results of that in the coming days.
So you may have to sign an item that you don't agree with philosophically.
Sometimes, in order to, what you have to do is you have to balance the good and the bad. And sometimes maybe you've got a situation where you think, certainly this is not the right policy, but failing to approve it may create a worse situation. So that's the thing you have to balance. And unfortunately, sometimes it's that way. It's which would be the worst. As we'd prefer to have it, which is the best. But sometimes that's not the case, and you have to determine which would do the most harm and choose the path that you think would be the most appropriate under those circumstances.
Was that the case 2 years ago when you signed the one-time money certification?
Well, I would point out that 2 years ago, we had a appropriation bill that provided supplemental state aid for 2 years. And so school districts in the first year got some ongoing money and some one-time money. But then they also knew how much they were getting in the second year. So they knew how much ongoing money they would have. The legislature, unfortunately, did not follow my plea or the law that says they should have approved of funding for supplemental state aid for the second year. They did not do that this year. And consequently, school districts are given a situation where they have no idea what they're going to get next year. So it's a very different situation than we had 2 years ago.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.